Hello and welcome back to the Rugby Paper podcast. Headlines from the weekend: a resurgent Wales, a fortuitous England, and a relentless France. With lots to discuss with myself, Nick, and Brendan. Joining us to do so and reflect on the third round is renowned rugby commentator Nick Heath. Hell of a round three, yeah. Three massively different matches to discuss. A resurgent Wales, which we sort of hinted at last week, but we probably didn't see coming to that extent. England, I think, fair to say, massively got away with one, even more so than they did 2 weeks prior, you could argue. France absolutely trounced Italy, which, you know, some of us expected, but again, certainly not to that extent. Let's review all. Joining us to do so, he's worked across Channel 4, Sky Sports, BBC, ITV, BT Sport, the list goes on. Nick Heath, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Ollie. Yeah, good, thanks. Lovely to be with you.
Yeah, lovely to have you. Lovely to have you. Where were you for the Calcutta Cup on Saturday afternoon?
I was in a hotel room in Treviso. I was out there doing the under-20 Six Nations, Italy, France at the weekend, which was just as much of a drubbing at age grade level. Quite a little unexpected, I think, as it was at the seniors in the end. So yes, was watching it in a hotel room. VPN was on, was one of those that I think, as I'm sure we'll come on to, but. You can be the wrong result of a 1 point game for a lot of your life, and you can be the right result of it. And clearly, I think England fully aware of the fact they got away with one.
I think we're all in agreement there. I suppose you kind of alluded to it, but give your reflections on the game as a whole. I mean, if you took the first 40 minutes was not one for the neutral. And I sort of said to the people I was with that it would be a great game after following up from Wales Ireland, and that didn't necessarily start that way.
No, I mean, I think the thing is, I'm amazed at how often this England team can look like they've just met. And that's what I sort of find frustrating. You have moments where the ball might be all over the place with this French team. There might be Dupont going backwards, but he's got the faith in himself that he knows what's going to happen. And there are others already, pulling shape that know where they need to be. And I don't always get that sense that's what we're getting from this England team. And I mean, Duhan van der Merwe's just got the keys to Twickenham's turf, hasn't he? It's just incredible. He seems to absolutely run riot and be allowed to get away with whatever he wants. And yeah, I mean, looking at a few of the stats, England had, I think, 17 attacking minutes compared to Scotland nearly having 24. Scotland had a hell of a lot more carries. They made double the amount of meters that England made. All these kind of 9 line breaks compared to England's 2. These are the sort of stats that back up how much England hung in there and took a result. And like I said, that's probably true of some of the opponents that came to Allianz Stadium in November and got away with a result when England might have been doing pretty well. But yeah, I think it's one of those. The Scots will be disheartened, but they've had 4 years of winning the Calcutta Cup. It's probably about time that they gave one up.
And Kano, I mean, do England deserve that? Like Nick said, they hung in there, and you have instances where the bounce of the ball doesn't go your way, and England probably had that in the autumn. They had that in the summer. It's going the other way now. To what extent do they deserve some credit for the way they hung in there on Saturday and put themselves in a position to at least salvage what eventually was a 1 point win?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you set the bar, doesn't it? And by the standards of the top teams in the world, not good enough. But not good enough all round. But where they have made incremental gains, quite big incremental gains is in defence. They've defended for long periods pretty well. They shut Scotland down, certainly in the second half, more. I thought actually the first 20 minutes, as long as you weren't wearing red tinted glasses, I thought the first 20 minutes were pretty good. I thought that I can't remember actually when was the Jones try was on 19 minutes. I mean, that was a fantastic try. That was a try for the ages, really, in many ways. Right the way down a back line, fantastic handling, and England badly exposed down the flanks. So that's the one area of the defence where they're not probably where they need to be is in terms of scramble defence and perhaps defence wide out. But yeah, I mean, I think that England. I think that what Nick Heath said is pretty well on the button. You know, they do look very clunky in attack. They are not cohesive, and that idea that they, you know, despite Borthwick having more training sessions than any other England coach has ever had access to, they look like strangers part of the time, at least. So
just to jump in on what you were saying there, Nick, about the defence, I agree that a lot of that has improved, but it strikes me England are so capable when teams look to try and strike in those wider channels, that 15-metre channel, which Scotland love to do. They love to sweep around and get out there. And it seems to me it's page number 1 where you can take the ball out to the line, you know, out to the touchline, and then all you've got to do is have that defender come in off the line and have someone go and take their place back out there. And the England defence will just go, oh, we'd better track in field and leave a massive gap on that line for whichever winger they're about to pop the ball back out to. They just can't seem to defend that area of the field at all.
No, and, you know, I mean, I've mentioned before that their scramble defence, when you look at New Zealand and South Africa in particular, if their first line or second line is broken, there's always line 3 or 4 with people, you know, tracking across the field and making usually pretty effective tackles. So, yeah, it's an area. Look, they're not a team. You know, I mean, I said in my match report, they're a team. You know, Borthwick aspires to greatness. They're a team in the foothills, right in the foothills.
But bear in mind that Steve Borthwick's now had 30 matches in charge. That's more than Jack Rowell ever had. You know, why? You know, to my mind, why are we not homing in on what the England game is? I was very disappointed to see Alex Mitchell back to doing his Ben Spencer impression. He's not the best box kicker in the world. He's not even half the player when he resorts to box kicking. He is a terrific, high tempo, attacking, proactive scrum half. Once he goes into the kicking mode, you might as well get him off. You can put somebody on who's a better kicker.
But not Harry Randall.
No, not Harry Randall, who is again being asked yet again. We have this conversation most England matches. They just haven't got it right in what they want from their halfbacks. And I have no idea why they thought that approach was good against Scotland, who behind the French are the one back division you don't want to be giving free pill to. Yeah. You want to absolutely prize every second possession that you've got. You do not hoof it up and give them a 50-50 chance of regaining it in open field. So I'm absolutely bamboozled by that tactically.
I'll tell you what, Brent, if it was a 50-50 chance most of the time, you'd say, okay.
But it wasn't because the chase was so poor.
Well, the chase is very often as good as the kick. And, you know, the kicking was all the time. You know, England's tendency is to kick far too long. You know,
it gives them got through that. I thought they'd worked their way through that. I mean, you know, but it suddenly came back. It was like a sort of default mode. And I thought, no, this is not where England need to go.
Well, I think that the idea is, you know, I mean, there's a lot of, I think that the idea to a degree is it gives them the time to get their defensive line, or what might be behind it is give the defensive line some sort of cohesion as it comes up. But you're right, it's against a team with Scotland's attacking flair. No. It was just like an invitation to, you know, hit me.
I did decide to jump onto a couple of the stats that came out after the game, and one of them was from the old Smart Ball, and it's looking at the team leaderboards for in-play kicking. Who kicks the ball away the most? Have a guess. Yes, England, 114 times over the course so far, and leading the way quite handsomely in that stat box.
I was going to say, who's next behind?
France with 88, so it's a pretty big jump back.
Yeah. And you've got Dupont doing his sort of kicking, which is of a different quality. A lot of the time.
Or in fact, no, sorry, it is. That stat isn't in order. So actually, it's Italy with 97, but the one where England are head and shoulders above everyone else is box kick. So they are booting it away from the ruck when they have possession, and they've done that 43 times so far. But that I think tells a bit of a story.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of while we're on the subject of kicking stats, Scotland averaged, and this was on the BBC, 9.7 passes per kick in that game. Does anyone want to guess how many England averaged?
4, 5,
2.5.
God.
Wow.
2.5 passes per kick. They kicked away 70% of possession. Their ruck speed was 6 seconds. And it's just like, my God, it's almost inexplicable, really, because it's like, no wonder you only scored one bloody try, because you didn't have the ball for 70% of the game.
But you get to a point in, like, Richard Wigglesworth is the attack coach. If Wiggy was kicking, the kicking would be of a much better, at least it would be of a much better quality. And, the old Saracens days, their kick chase was terrific. You sort of get the game plan there. Even though it was limited, it was successful. But England are just the worst of both worlds at the moment. And they're adopting it, but they're not executing it. And it makes no sense.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And the selection makes no sense. I mean, there are a lot of things, when you look at the coaching group outside Borthwick, Borthwick obviously had no international head coach experience before England gave him the job.
Yeah.
But if you look at his coaching group, with the exception of Strawbridge, they are a very, very young coaching group. They're very early in the script in all of their coaching careers, Wigglesworth included, Harrison included. And I sort of think that a lot of England's learning curve, if you like, is about their learning curves. It's taking a very long time for certain things. There's been a huge amount of plaudits for the England scrum, which finally got the better of somebody in a scrum contest, with a little bit of assistance from the referee too, but that happens sometimes. And, I look at it and read it and I just think, hang on, this is one game. It's about consistency over a length of time that earns you Lions places and world-class reputations.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Yeah. Sorry, go on, Nick.
I was just going to say, at the moment, they're not in that script, really, for me.
I think Richard Wigglesworth is an interesting one to mention because, lovely bloke and clearly had a great career, but I don't see an attacking, flavor and a defined attacking style that comes from him. He was a very pragmatic player, as we know. He was always, the England caps that he got were around those others that were going to be a little bit more creative or give it a bit more zip. He was there to get the compass out and pick the corners and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how you become that, how you go from being that sort of 9 to potentially being able to get an England team to play the sort of game that gets people off their seats in the Stade de France or wherever else. I just, it's square pegs and round holes for me.
Yeah. I agree.
I mean, he's an interesting, his background, very obviously he was part of the Sale side that won the Premiership. And, he was very effective in that team. Before his stint at Saracens, he'd already won a Premiership title, and he's also a bloke who flitted between 9 and 10, or 10 and 9 early in his career, and also a bit at fullback as well. So he's got probably the knowledge in there, but at the moment it's not coming through, certainly at this level.
I think we've mentioned that England got away with the one in terms of them being outperformed. A couple of decisions in there that were a little bit funky as well. I'm actually going to go in reverse order. I think Jamie Roberts publicly was the first one to point out. But Nick, Finn Russell took his kick, what was about 3 meters wider than he should have. Now, what the hell happened there? Because I thought Duhan van der Merwe put it down pretty clearly in line with the 5 meter line, maybe a foot to the left, and all of a sudden Finn Russell is right on the touchline.
Yeah, well, it's a mess by the officials, certainly, but equally, how many eyes are there from technical assistants and various people, the people that come on with a tea, someone with a water bottle to say, hold on a minute, mate, I think you'll find it was over here. We have, coaches coming on in in Waterboy format who are able to start offering them advice on the countdown and how much longer they've got until they need to kick it, a la Finn Smith the week before, or the round before. So I think as far as that's concerned, yes, the officials might have got it wrong, but you do need to have other people's eyes on it and to be making sure that the right things are happening.
And we also had the bizarre sight of Maro Itoje, who I think was probably wanting a word with the ref, maybe trying to get some last-ditch TMO look at something in the try, which I don't think there was anything. And that with 20 seconds left, he's only about 8 yards from Finn Russell in his eyesight, and he's been moved away by the Scotland player can see what's going on, and he's shuffling him to one side. He shouldn't be there. He should be on the try line. And I mean, that is very disconcerting if you're lining up a match-winning kick from the touchline and you've only got 19 seconds left. That was completely out of order. And I'm amazed there hasn't been some sort of kerfuffle about that.
No. Well, Scotland, they haven't commented on the Maro thing. They've said they don't want to complain about the positioning of the kick, even though I think it's pretty acknowledged that was incorrect. The Maro
That's very diplomatic of them, but somebody had a word about the Maro thing.
I always love those as well. We're not going to complain about the thing that we're just going to mention so that everybody's aware of that we're not going to complain about.
We're taking the high ground in defeat.
If it had happened to most teams, there would be a kerfuffle around it. I mean, I certainly read something that indicated that Maro had an influence in getting the kick moved further out wide as well. So I don't know whether that's accurate or not. But it seemed that the referee was, suggestible on a number of occasions, really, and he certainly didn't have his best game. But he's got other eyes, and I sometimes wonder how much is not picked up by the assistant referees, particularly forward passes. I mean, listen, this is a hobby horse on this podcast, but it just seems to be endless. You look at passes constantly and you think, hang on, that was forward. And they're not even going back and looking at it.
I think, let's ban forward passes for today. Just because
it's always good fun to have a rant about
fourth week in a row. But I think Maro being out of position is a good point.
Well, he's got away lightly with it. It was gamesmanship of the Premier Order.
I mean, it's that. And
he shouldn't be there.
It's re-kick worthy, right? Because it's the equivalent of an early charge down in terms
reset. Another minute. Take your time, Finn. Maybe say, hang on, the kick wasn't there. It was there.
Yeah.
I mean,
I suppose
focus on it. The last thing that a kicker wants is to have shenanigans around a kick. He's trying to concentrate. But the reality is that the person who should have said something and who should have known where the placement of the kick was going to be was Russell.
Well, I think he started to set up there.
He did. And then he was moved to one side, 2.5 meters.
He was moved by the referee. He should have said something about Maro for sure.
I suppose he could be done for if he's not careful for insubordination or whatever. But the reality is that he should have held his ground. He should have said, "Look, this is the right place. You check the grounding."
Yeah, I mean, but as you say, kickers are in their bubble, aren't they? All they want to do is do their kicking routine. They don't want to worry about Maro approaching stage left from about 10 yards away. They don't want to worry about the ref waving his hands and saying kick there. All he's concerned about is putting the ball between the posts. So I wouldn't blame Russell for not putting the ball and just time out. He was already into his bubble and he just wanted to get the kick over. That's the way he is, isn't he?
Yeah.
We'll never know whether he was able to kick it from the right spot or not. It's one of those. It's the officials certainly need to take the lion's share of the responsibility here. They cocked up. There's no mistaking that in terms of a pretty simple line. You're meant to draw back from where the try was scored, but equally, there are normally enough eyes on every other moment of the game that for the Scottish camp to not have someone be able to feed in or have that view is a bit of a miss from them as well.
Yeah. And talking of misses, Russell's strike rate off the tee.
Thought you were going to talk about Russell's misses then.
In this Six Nations pretty is awful, really. You know, I mean, his Lions prospects, he was obviously a shoe-in, considered the shoe-in for the Test 10 slot, and that's beginning to look fairly wobbly now.
Yeah. Well, you've got the two 22-year-olds making serious claims. I'd say Sam Prendergast especially. But 3 out, he's gone from missing 1 kick all championship to making 3 out of 8, 37% this year.
I saw a very cruel comment on Twitter the other day and said that Finn Russell's a big player in small matches, which is cruel. But there is a slight kernel there, isn't there? He hasn't actually won much in his career. He is brilliant often, but there are occasions when he does go a bit AWOL. And I just thought, 10% of that is true. He is a wonderful player. He had a good match other than his kicking, didn't he?
His ball in hand, he was great.
He had a very fine match. But, to miss 3 like that.
I agree in terms of a single 10 having to perform that role as kicker and orchestrator. But if you're looking at him to pull the strings against an Aussie side on that tour, and you've got the option of someone else in that team, let's chuck in a Marcus Smith at 15 for the sake of continuing that fudge. Then you've got someone that can kick the goals and he can continue to pull the strings. So I think there's a way he still gets to wear that 10 shirt, but whether he's the dead-eye kicker, probably not.
I don't know what his stats have been in the Gallagher Premiership this season, but I mean, until this Six Nations, his international goal kicking had improved. I mean, obviously, when he came onto the scene, I think it was Greg Laidlaw who was doing most of the kicking. And it was a while until Russell actually sort of was given duty. So he was clearly never a natural number 1 choice. And I think he worked hard on it. But I think Marcus Smith obviously had a slightly rough goal kicking spell in New Zealand in the summer last year, and then obviously the opening game against Ireland this year, or against France, sorry, it wasn't it, where he missed a few. And I think you can turn it around fairly quickly. So I'd still say Russell has one hand on the shirt, but the sort of grip is just slipping a little bit, you feel. Just on refereeing decisions, guys, very finally, Tommy Freeman's try. And what the hell went on there? Nick, you may have seen camera angles that we haven't. I don't know, but did he get that ball down?
No. I've seen no extra camera angles, and the slightly sheepish nature of his mixed zone interview afterwards, I think, also gave it away. I mean, again, Lady Luck has slightly shone on England there. I don't think there was a particularly clear element of grounding, and it's amazing the amount of things that feel like foregone conclusions that referees and TMOs will sweat over and really work to prove haven't happened, and eventually will say, well, look, that's not happened. So for there to be a moment, in a big historic clash like that there's an assumption, that was down, that was fine, let's all move on. I thought, hold on a minute, you're normally a little more thorough than that. And I don't know. Look, you can get torn on these things though, because on the other hand, you would sit here and say, and I will have done before, I love the fact that the bloke in the middle will make the decision and we all move on. It all comes out in the wash. You miss some, you lose, you win some, whatever. So there's kind of two sides to it, isn't there? We love them to get the big decisions right. Ultimately, that's what they would say about themselves. But there's almost part of it that makes me go, well, if the bloke 6 inches away has said that he's seen a grounding and he's happy and we all move on, then maybe his 2 pairs, his pair of peepers has got the one angle that the rest of the world's cameras haven't. So who knows?
He was in a good position. That's the one thing you can say. I mean, he was in a very good position, but like you, I didn't see any camera angle which showed that ball touch down properly.
And that's the issue. The issue is how many cameras have they got at the ground, particularly in and around the in goal. I don't think they've got enough. In American football, with their sort of huge resources, they've got cameras covering about every square inch of the pitch. And I just think that it's again, rugby union has gone to technology, but not really invested in it properly. And the coverage of the game has got, in many ways, has been given a shoeing. I mean, they apparently, when Russell was kicking, the camera was off him.
Yeah, they just had the wide view, from the stand view. You could see something going on, and Nick Mullins was having to commentate on that, but there was no pictures of actually live pictures of what was going on.
you know, the acid kick of the game.
Yeah. I have to say, I'm not sure Freeman handled that post-game interview quite as well as he could have.
Yeah,
because I think he's basically admitted that he didn't think he'd got it down, still celebrated wildly. And I'm sure every other player on the planet, certainly every other winger, would have done exactly the same thing. However, there's a certain etiquette in sport where you don't then essentially admit your own sort of not completing the try as he effectively did.
But again, it's tricky. Do you go gung-ho, I definitely scored that, and have 99% of the world think, actually, no, you didn't. We've seen the camera angles, and you didn't score that. That looks even worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's tricky. I don't know. I just know the knives came out in the comments section regardless, and maybe that would have always been the case, and that's not necessarily his fault.
I think they give a free knife to everybody in the comments section anyway these days, so I wouldn't worry.
That's true. A free blunt knife to everyone.
Yeah, rusty old blade.
Yeah, exactly. Just very finally on England, they're now obviously odds-on favourites to end this championship 4 wins out of 5. Their points difference is garbage at the moment for 2 wins out of 3, given that 2 of them are 1-point wins. So they'd be very unlikely to pull off a championship win. Let's say the likely happens, and one of France or Ireland, let's say Ireland for the moment, go on to win the championship. England potentially comes second, maybe third. Is that a success? I mean, we're obviously still, this England team don't really know each other clearly, or they certainly play like it, and we still don't really know whether we have a team in the making or not. So is 4 wins out of 5, even though they could quite easily be 0 from 3 right now, a success?
In terms of results, yes. In terms of where they've come, where they were in the autumn, what's got an L by it and what's got a W by it, then yes. And I think based on expectation. Now, is it successful based on the sum of their parts and the overall continued conversation around this England team? Arguably not, because I still, as you sort of mentioned, I still don't think people necessarily have the faith in Steve Borthwick and his coaching staff and the style that we're not sure we see yet or can understand. And we will hear until we're blue in the face. These lads are working incredibly hard for each other, and that's great. I'm glad you're all having a lovely time and you're working hard. But is there any chance you can show us how you play this game of ours that we love seeing, that plenty of other teams seem to have a real clarity around and a structure, and whether it's a little bit more formulaic and in an Irish sense with a few big lumps, or whether it's creativity jouet that we see from the French. So 4 wins for them is a success, and sometimes perhaps you just have to build on those being 4 green ticks across the championship to say, right, now we bounce in and we go from here, and this will be our foundation, as ugly as it was. But it's success on paper, even if for the fans at times, in terms of wanting to support a style of play or really understanding what this England team are about, they may still feel a little adrift.
Yeah, you made 3 or 4 really good points there, Nick. And my biggest
that's a miracle.
But your Steve Borthwick, but the most impressive thing about what you just said is your Steve Borthwick impression is fantastic.
Thanks.
Really, really good. I almost closed my eyes to sort of
imagine to fall asleep in what most of us do. Yes.
Yeah, exactly, and believe nothing that you're saying. Mm-hmm. Brendan, what do you make of it?
It's so difficult to call. Exactly as Nick says. How can you really argue with 4 wins in the Six Nations? It's difficult. And no doubt 4 wins in the Six Nations will certainly go towards Bill Sweeney's next bonus. So in that terms, it will be considered a success. Have England progressed in any way? Well, we'll see. They've got 2 matches now to see if we can't have a better quality of win. I'm not taking Wales away for granted at all. We might come to that. That has got banana skin written all over it now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, ultimately, you'd have to say 4 wins will just about constitute a success.
Yeah. Guys, let's talk about that Welsh performance. Kano, is this vindication that Gatland moving on was probably the best way to go? I mean, obviously, Sherratt wielded the axe, Llewellyn had a great game. Anscombe had a great game. Ellis-Mee had a great game. There were a lot of constituent parts there that all of a sudden made, especially in that first half, the Welsh outfit look incredibly different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was time that Warren moved on. And I think that Ireland went into the game overconfident. Some of the stuff that was for the game reeked of overconfidence, and they got a bit of a wake up call, certainly in the first 40 minutes. It's a bit of hope. It's picking the people who are in form and picking people in their right positions. Bringing Anscombe back at 10, it gave a coherence to what they were doing that they didn't have previously, and they played with, I think, with a vigor that they haven't shown for some time. They played with real commitment. Jack Morgan, led brilliantly, I think. So yes, it was the right moves, but it's a really strange situation when the guy who's been given the coaching mantle says that he doesn't want it. So going forward, so they've made a statement in this Six Nations at least, but they're still on the wrong side of the win-loss ledger.
I think my favorite thing was finding out that Matt Sherratt had booked in with his dad and a mate to be watching the Wales-Ireland game in a pub in Cardiff, and has then had to slightly renege on that commitment. Oh right, have you got something else on? Yeah, sort of. I loved that, but yeah, there was definitely that kind of football sense of a new manager, new bit of bounce back, wasn't there? But I agree, Kano. I think God forbid you pick a few players that know each other and play in combinations in a sport where the 8 know in the 9 and the 9 know in the 10 and all of these sorts of things are quite important. And it turns out that they might gel a bit better and know what the other one's going to do and perhaps be in the right place. Goodness me, it's a complicated game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the Scarlets back three. They worked as a back three, didn't they? You could see it. And in passing, Ellis-Mee spent a whole season with Nottingham in the RFU Championship last season. Again, for the attention of Bill Sweeney, that one, that division, the Championship, breeds players. Hasn't bred one for England. England weren't on the ball. He's as English qualified as he is Welsh. But Wales are on the ball. They saw him. And he looks a good player. I tell you what, he looks a good player to me.
Listen, one of the scandals in English rugby at the moment, without a shadow of a doubt, is that because of the Premiership cartel, a Championship player cannot be picked by the England coach.
That is actually enshrined in regulation, is it?
I think it is, yeah. So, which is extraordinary, So if you got a DuPont coming through, and he played a couple of seasons for a Championship club, and his talent was absolutely evident to everybody, and England was short of a 9 because of a run of injuries or whatever else. Unless he transferred to a Premiership club, he couldn't play.
That's extraordinary.
Well, it's very telling of how they consider the Championship, isn't it?
Yeah.
What happens if, obviously this is hypothetical, but say Wales put in a performance the weekend after this one against Scotland. Maybe again they don't quite get the job done, and then maybe even they upset England. England will still go to Principality as odds-on favourites, but like Brendan says, that is now quite the banana skin, and they'll get up for that game. I think we can all believe that. The calls will be for Sherratt to stay on. Do we think that there's any chance that happens?
God, we're talking the WRU here, aren't we? I mean, they're difficult to read. I mean, if they went really well, if they had 2 wins, and played an outstanding brand of rugby, it would be very, very tempting, surely.
Steady.
The whole nation would be behind him, surely.
2 wins.
Rather than bring in another big name, is he going to instantly turn things around? Well, maybe not. Big names don't always do that.
Yeah, Cheika's emerged as the front runner this week, is what everyone's saying. But I don't know. 2 wins and beautiful brand of rugby being played is maybe a little bit little bit far-fetched, but I certainly...
Well, if say that against 15 straight defeats, I think that you could call that a sea change.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, yeah. And Nick, Kano, as our front row expert, I thought you'd enjoy the performance of Will Griff-John.
Yeah.
Which felt somewhat vindictive, especially when people were scratching their heads at his inclusion.
Well, you wondered, you wondered where their selection skills have been. Warren, it was one of Warren's strangest aspects of him for me was that he always went for footballing props ahead of props who did their day job, if you like. And Will Griff-John's been around for the block for a long time, and he's always been pretty steady. And it's just amazing that he's discovered. I mean, I know that he's been knocking around the Wales squad for a bit, but for him to suddenly get the opportunity and to play against Porter, who would be most people's first pick on the loose head for the Lions, or was, and to really, I wouldn't say did a number on him, but he certainly bolstered the Welsh scrum in a way that we haven't seen for a long time.
Yeah.
And we also had a ref who decided to ref Porter a few times.
Yeah.
You don't often see that. I wonder if that's a new trend. That's always been a potential Achilles heel for Ireland if the refs start going for Porter.
Yeah. Nick, the 20-minute red card was obviously, some people felt it was too harsh, some people felt it wasn't harsh enough. Where did you sit on, well, I don't want to open the whole sort of canvas, but that decision in particular?
I thought it was the right decision. Certainly, I thought it's one of those that I think an old money could have been a straight red, and on we go. I think it's I think while I do try and stay on top of these things, I've only really just worked out the slight wrinkle that you can get a 20-minute red card where you're not missing the rest of the match, but no, hold on. Am I getting confused? Because someone else comes on after the 20 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah.
So yes, that's right. So then you are still banned. So yeah, I was looking at that and thinking, is there a chance someone comes back on and then subsequently gets banned for 3 matches, but they still play the rest of the game? But no, of course that can't happen. No. Yeah. Oh, hello. Sorry.
That's all right.
Let's go. Pick that up. So yeah, I thought it was the right decision. And as much as those sorts of decisions don't tend to fall to players such as that, I think it was well adjudged, frankly, and it did give the Welsh that extra lift that they needed. And I loved it. I loved it. It's so nice just hearing the Principality in full voice. They are, a rugby loving nation. They are just as in touch with where Wales are as anybody will be. And so they're not going to get ahead of themselves. But what they are going to do is completely cheer on a side that have the opportunity to just go, okay, we know where we are, but we've got a new bloke in that just wants us to focus on a couple of things. And hey, I know the bloke to my left and right a little bit better than I did last week. So, and a few new faces turning up and going, come on, boys, let's just give this a lash and see where we end up. And how glorious was that? They completely did. And again, just grabbing a couple of the stats from the game, they carried more meters than Ireland, 770 to 500. They made more carries, 145 to 106. They had more attacking minutes. So all these kind of things, 6 line breaks to 2. They beat 33 defenders to 13. Like, there were a lot of stats that were in Wales's favour here, apart from that final scoreline. So they forced Ireland into a few handling errors and things as well. So in terms of just playing the game and doing what they could, I think I think they won over a few people to the fact that, okay, this isn't the solution to everything, but boy, was it a day that felt good, albeit in defeat.
I sort of had a flashback to 10 years ago, certainly when the scores were very, very tight, just in terms of it feeling sort of like, the Six, obviously, I'm 25, so didn't necessarily grow up when the Six Nations became 6, but the sort of prime Six Nations as I know it, when Wales are in full force, obviously competing with the Green or in Saturday side of the Irish, hearing the Wales chants in the background in the Principality, and it's like, Irish fans are going to actually, both Welsh and Irish fans are going to hate me for saying this. There aren't many times where I've supported Wales in a Six Nations game. I think Saturday afternoon was one of them, but it sort of made me realise that, or reinforce the fact that it's such a stronger tournament with a compelling, strong, good to watch Welsh side in it. And I think collectively we can probably all agree that we only hope that keeps going and that momentum is garnered.
I'd second that. I'd also just chipping quickly on that red. I mean, for me, it was much more a straight red than a 20-minute red. And there's a bit of a philosophical thing here. I mean, you've got a dominant team like Ireland who keep winning. Now, the occasions when they might slip up occasionally might be when they do go down to 14 men for the match. Now, it's not conclusive. We've got evidence, haven't we, that as many teams win shorthanded as they do lose. But, you would think in a big international match like that might have made the difference for Wales sneaking a win. Well, what's better for the tournament? Wales sneaking a win or Ireland ploughing on as they do? And I've always thought that a red has to cost the team. I don't get this individual bit at all. It's a team game. You tackle as a team. You defend as a team. You take one for the team. You go offside for the team. You take a bloke out for the team. Therefore, if you're going to get sent off, the team has to suffer. You can't just have them bringing on a player after 20 minutes. Not for me anyway. So it's worth a whole programme, that one. But I thought it could have made the difference on Saturday.
Yeah, but what you can't do, Bren, is move it toward. I'm not suggesting you're doing that. Is move it towards a full red because you want a better game.
Well, no, but that was a full red in my opinion. Okay, let me just clarify that. That was a full red in my opinion. And it should have been a full red, and Ireland should have paid the penalty. Now, that doesn't mean to say they were going to lose. Ireland have beaten South Africa with 14 men in South Africa before. It doesn't happen like that.
It does start to beg the question of the purple red, because it's ultimately it's ultimately that sort of that aspect where the full red now seems to only be around thuggish behavior, a punch, a gouge, any of those sorts of really horrible things. And anything that looks like a whoops, I got that one slightly wrong, it's probably a high shot or it's probably something nasty. Well, it's turned into 20 minutes. So I do think that we now have this 20-minute excuse to ensure that we can all that after 20 minutes we can ensure it's a 15-man contest. But yeah, have we said goodbye to actually, unless it's something really horrible, but actually it could be someone trying to make a hit, that's trying to be super dominant, trying to really make a statement in the game. And I think there are points at which where if you do that and get that badly wrong, that's just as important in terms of foul play as anything else deemed more thuggish in inverted commas.
I think it's also significantly less punitive when you have Bundy Aki, one of the best centres in the world, to bring off the bench as a replacement. And I love that after about 5 minutes on the pitch, Bundy looked like he'd been on the pitch as long as anyone else, because he was covered.
And that's what the Six Nations are about. You've got the drama. Aki comes on. If they had been down to 14, but he was going to come on anyway, wasn't he, at some stage?
Yes.
He comes on, inspired by Aki, 14-man Ireland win. Well, this is the stuff of Six Nations law. Don't deny us the opportunity of that sort of story.
Brendan, are you promoting match fixing?
Where did I mention that? Where are you coming from?
It seems like you're trying to spin a narrative where it's like certain decisions are made to sort of make the games as good as possible.
Well no, but I mean, don't take away that natural thing that sometimes people get sent off, and sometimes a team has to either win or lose with 14.
Yeah. So if the last pass in an absolute worldie of a try is forward, you just give it, yeah?
No, never. Never.
Yeah, why not?
Absolutely never.
I think about 3 or 4.
If it's a team everyone wants to win, yeah.
Yeah, that's
just
fair.
pass correctly.
Never
good enough. Just pass properly. You don't deserve to win if you can't do the last pass.
Yeah. Did anybody see the England A game?
I saw a bit, yeah.
I saw highlights. I didn't watch the game in full.
What did you think of Deegan's pass?
I didn't see that one, no.
Oh, didn't you? Okay.
I saw bits of the game, yeah.
Was it forward by any chance?
Well, it was one of those that sort of looked as if it probably had a yard forward, yeah.
Okay, so
it wasn't even looked at.
Wow.
And, the commentators were eulogizing what a great pass it was.
Mm. Yeah, that
usually depends where the commentator played. If it's a winger, they virtually never call forward passes.
whereas the props can identify them astutely. Yeah,
I think so. Probably.
Yeah, they're famously trained to pass well.
Props, locks, back row forwards. Yeah, they read forward passes for sure. Yeah.
Okay, next time David Flatman calls out a forward pass that isn't called, I will give you a call, Nick, and congratulate you.
Good.
Guys, obviously the big one to look forward to in a couple of weeks is France versus Ireland. France's defeat to England has obviously taken the sting out of it a little bit, just because obviously the Grand Slam is only on the line for one team now. But Nick, France have got a bit of wind back in their sails. That was sort of, I mean, the last two matches have summed up the French rugby problem of the last decade, but particularly 5 years. Where they sort of go missing at the key moments, but they were also phenomenal ball in hand.
Is that to me?
It is, yeah.
Sorry. Yes, I mean, I sort of had that slight worry for moments when Italy were fighting back at the weekend, and we all love to see the Azzurri doing well, and I just thought, this French team that didn't quite get the result against England, albeit they had hands like feet for the whole game, and I thought, what if they just start to have that classic French fragility and all of a sudden start to doubt themselves and fall off. I was like, I think world rugby would just be devastated. It'd be like, no, don't lose faith in yourselves. Everything was fine. So I think seeing them get back into full flight, while I wouldn't mean it against Italy, was certainly good. Everything's starting to stick again, and that is well timed ahead of going into a game against Ireland. Certainly, it's we don't want to see. It was something quite funny last year when I was doing a warm up game, or it was a friendly game. It was the Red Roses against France, and I was working with an ex-international, I shall say. Anyway, we were chatting before the game, and that French team, who've been rivals of England's for a while, but they haven't won a game against them in 16 tests or something stupid. But still, we expect that women's French team to turn up and do something. And I sort of said to my colleague, I was just like, is it that thing where you don't know which French team's going to turn up? And she turned around and said, no, we do know which French team's going to turn up. It's the shit one. And so it proved to be, because England won again, and they just don't seem to have it. So it's it can be an endless conversation around which France team are going to turn up, the oldest adage in the world. But we've got used to it being the one that is absolutely dynamite. And I certainly don't want that result against England to mean that they have any crisis of confidence, because I think the more they set the standards for fantastic, entertaining rugby, the more other nations, have to find it. And watching Scotland find it over the last couple of years has been an absolute joy at times. So I think England couldn't be further from that sort of blueprint. But Ireland France is certainly a tasty old encounter.
I did fear for Italy last week. You just felt, France were on the naughty step for 2 weeks there. They were smarting. Somebody was going to get it. And it was Italy away in perfect conditions in Rome. And Italy, bless them, for the first 40 minutes, tried to match them and then scored a couple of beautiful tries themselves and played some good rugby. But I just thought from early on in that match, this is going to be a hiding. And France just ramped it up. Looked full of energy this time. Flamont is a big player for them now, isn't he? When he comes back and he's tearing along. And I hadn't seen much of his second row partner, the lad from Lyon, whose name escapes me at the moment. He's another great athlete as well. And it just clicked. And I mean, they would have put 30, 40 points on most teams, I think, last week.
Yeah. I mean, they were on a mission, and the game against Ireland was what was in their sights, even though they were in Rome. And they've made a statement. They've lost one game by a point, and they played, they threw that game to the 4 wins. So I don't buy into the fact that this French side doesn't have rigor. I think it's got a lot more rigor than probably most of the sides that we've seen over the last 15 years. They want the title. They want to take the title off Ireland, and they'll do everything that they can to do so. And I think that they probably are equipped to do so as well, because I don't think that the Irish looked on it against Wales. They'll get the hurry up as a consequence of that. It should be a hell of a game. Should be a
They
fantastic.
kept Dupont on for the full 80, which I thought was sending out a message. We're not protecting this bloke. We want the maximum win here. We want an 80-minute performance. Actually, and a word for the fullback, Leo Barre. I mean, France.
He was phenomenal.
He was incredible.
Fullbacks from nowhere. Now, this lad, we don't know quite so much about him because he was the under-20 fullback when all the Junior World Cups were cancelled, the last two COVID ones. But he was their best player of that year group. But, of course, the queue ahead of him, he comes in and you think, gosh, that's one of the best 2 or 3 young fullbacks I've seen in years. He is some player. And he might start the next match.
He played against England in Lyon last year and scored a great try in that game. So he's put his marker down before. But they've got another fullback, the Bordeaux guy, Burros, who scored a fantastic try against the All Blacks in the autumn. So they're stacked. They've got really great back 3 players at the moment.
I mean, they've got a selection headache in a couple of weeks because you can't. Barrow was my man of the match, not Dupont. Dupont played well, but I thought Barrow was absolutely phenomenal. And Untermack is coming back, but I don't know how you can drop Barrow off that performance. And
do you bring Penno in because the 2 wings are on fire?
Penno, I think Galtier was making a point. I don't think he's saying Penno's not one of his 2 best wingers.
No, I mean, I'm being facetious there a bit. But...
So, it's a proper selection headache. Because I think Ramos will stay at 10 and he sticks with Barre. I don't think Untermack comes back in. And you pick him up.
Call.
It'll be really interesting to see. Obviously, we'll preview these games a little bit more next week. Big movers in the Predictions League. I've gone from first to last in 1 week, which I'm sure Brendan and Cain will be thrilled about. Especially
this is a mystery to me. Tell us what you did.
Well, I predicted a Scotland win, as did Craig. So we've gone from the top 2 to the bottom 2.
Is it that close that just one call can?
It's really, really tight, actually.
It sounds like the top 14 barrage. You lose one match and you go from 4th to 9th.
The trouble was, all 4 of you, including Rich, predicted Wales would score 18 points. And then Wales scored 18 points. So that sent you into stratosphere, which is quite weird, if anything, to be quite honest. So anyway, Kano, you're in first on 52. Rich from the Rugby Analyst is in second on 51. Chris on 49. Brendan 48. The special guest team, which Nick, you're sort of technically a part of, but obviously no games to predict this week, 47, and me 46. So it's pretty damn close. Anyway, I'm just going through that as quickly as we can. Nick, what's your plan for the rest of the championship?
So I'm largely covering the under-20s Six Nations Championship, which is great. I've got another couple of dates with that. I'm in Bath for England's next game against Italy, and then I'm in Paris for the France-Scotland under-20s game, which should be good. And of course, it's running concurrently along with the Rugby Europe Championship, which I'm very pleased to work on as well. So we've got some of the kind of playoffs coming up in that now into some semi-finals. So I've got the likes of Belgium against Switzerland, the European Chocolate Derby, as I'm calling it, to come this weekend.
Are you hoping that catches on?
Yeah, I really am. Yeah.
All right. Well,
the Praline Derby, whatever you want to call it.
Sponsored by Cadbury.
Oh, well, I'm sure Brendan will watch that for sure. I know Brendan's a big rugby.
I'm getting quite a fan of the Belgians, actually. They're some big chunky lads, and they put an old style, almost championship rugby team, I'd call them. And they got
a lot of that European rugby reminds me of the Champo, I have to say.
Yeah, good championship matches. And Belgium got this young lad who's in the Toulouse team occasionally. Forgotten his name. He's a very nice player, 13. So they gave
Florian Remu.
He's the one. Remu. He's already played fullback for Toulouse a couple of times.
Yeah, and they got a decent 9 as well. Isaac Montoisi is pretty good.
They got some real lumps up front, and they gave Portugal a real good run for the money. And Portugal had quite a good side out that night. So we're heading towards a probable Netherlands v Belgium 5th, 6th, and that's important because that team will go to the repechage for the World Cup. We've already got 4 European qualifiers, as Nick will tell you, from the first 2 matches, basically, wasn't it? It was very, very quick, short, sharp, wasn't it, this year, the World Cup qualification?
Yeah. So Portugal in there and Spain as well. So it's all set up very nicely. Yeah, semi-finals: Georgia, Romania, Portugal, Spain in terms of the sort of cup end of things, and then the rest of those rankings. It's Netherlands, Germany this coming weekend, Belgium, Switzerland. So probably looking at that Netherlands, Belgium fight for 5th and a chance. They've all got the hashtag Road to Australia 27 going on. So that now, well, after this weekend, will certainly only count now for a couple more teams.
And what are you going to call a Lowlands derby? A Belgium Holland? There must be a term for that.
I think you've just done it. I think that
Lowlands
was
it. Derby, yeah.
Another one to catch on. Nick, it's been so great having you here. I know you need to dash, but thank you so much for joining us. And all the best for the rest of the under-20s and obviously the Rugby Europe Championship as well.
Pleasure. Lovely to spend some time talking the game with you all. And have a good week.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday, and to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.